Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 16, The Petulant Princess. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. And welcome back to the Stories Told podcast, where today we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 2 of the series Willow, which is now streaming on Disney+. And the title of this episode is called The High Aldwin. But before we get to that, Mike, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing really well too, thank you. What have you been working on this week?
I've mostly been working on outlining and a lot of just thinking about future stories, sequels to the books that I'm working on now, outlining Zara Book 3 and another epic fantasy story that I'm working on. As much writing as I would like to be doing, but it's all part of the process. Oh, you?
Yes. So similar stuff, doing writing, doing prepping, doing all the things that come with supporting, a career as a writer. I've got 3,500 words now on that short story.
Oh, excellent.
So I think I'd like to finish it before our next podcast, so that I can have time to think about it and edit it and polish it and make it good. So,
That would be good. And it's a max of 5,000 words, right?
It's 6 to 8.
6 to 8, okay.
Yeah. So I'm, 2,500 words away from the 6, which I think will be pretty easy to do.
2,500 words away from 6,000.
Yeah, 2,500. Did I say 25,000? No, 2,500.
Okay, that's good.
So, yeah. And have you read or consumed any great stories in the last week that really left an impression on you?
Yes, yesterday I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Very good. What did you think?
I loved it. I'm a huge fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, the first two.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a great follow-up. It's much darker than the first two.
Oh, it's so dark.
But I still really enjoyed it.
But I will say this, I'm not a big fan of dark, which is something that, you and I'm looking forward to exploring as we look at dark entertainment. I'm looking forward to exploring that. While I'm not a fan of dark, the light that was in that movie was absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a really good job of making the story, have human touches. And just those moments that really, make you want to cheer. And he puts warmth in there, even when there's darkness.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna have to decide to talk about that down the road here.
Yes. Agreed.
We're gonna give people some time to go see it, and then maybe when it gets pulled from the theaters, we can talk about it.
Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. I am still working on the Stormlight Archive. I am almost to the end. And I've gotten to that stage where I'm reading really, really slowly.
So you're almost to the end of part 1 of book 1 of.
Right now, it's the second book in the series,
Okay.
So I'm almost to the end of the second book. I don't know what part it is, but I'm reading it very, very slowly so that it won't be over.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and as I understand it, I thought I heard that he's working on book 5. So I'm going to have to read the other 2 books before book 5 even more slowly. so that I don't have to wait for book 5 to be finished. I think he says he expects that one to be done in a year.
Yeah, the good thing he's not George Martin, so you can be assured he's actually going to finish his story.
Yeah. So anyway, so now we're going to talk about Willow. And I guess we should probably mention right off the bat something that you and I were discussing before we started the podcast, that Disney's pulling Willow.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yes. So here we are talking about it. And I know I've got one person who is, a fan who I interact with on social media that has started to watch the series because you and I started to talk about it and now won't be able to watch it anymore.
Yeah, well, it's there for I think another few days at least if they end up deciding to pull it. So maybe they can watch it really fast.
Yeah, hopefully. I may get on social media and let them know that this is going to get pulled. So if you're going to watch it, quickly binge. Time to binge.
Yes. And hopefully they'll put it back up sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And as you and I talked about, we think it's a strategy that Disney has used before, which is to create demand by pulling things and hanging on to them. And remember back in the old days of VHS videos and DVDs, they used to pull out their most popular famous movies from the vault.
Yes.
And make them available for a short period of time.
Yeah, that's true. It could be some plan like that. Hopefully that's what they're doing.
I actually won a special collector's edition copy of Sleeping Beauty, the original old Sleeping Beauty with Maleficent and all that. I think I won it on a radio call-in show. I was like the right number caller.
That's funny.
That's how long ago it was. Do they even have radio call-in shows anymore?
I don't know.
Wait a minute. I think I still have it someplace because it was like this special edition. Anyway, so we think that's what Disney is going to be doing with this content that they're pulling from Disney Plus is to put it in their vault and create demand in order to make more money because, of course, they exist to make money.
Yeah, it is a business.
Exactly. So before that happens, what we're going to do is we're going to talk right now about the High Aldwin, which is the second episode in the first series, the Willow series, the first season. And then if they do end up pulling the series as we think they're going to, then we'll go ahead and summarize the rest of the series because Mike and I have actually seen it all the way through to the end for the first season. So we'll be able to, in the next podcast, just do a really broad summary of the rest of the season. And then if it ever comes out again, maybe we can do the rest of the episodes.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So let's talk about the High Aldwin. I'm going to go ahead and do a really fast summary here. And I'm going to summarize this a little bit out of order than how the episode played out. It makes more sense to me to kind of talk about this in 3 segments. So the first segment is going to be, we get to see a series of flashbacks in this episode, which actually were really helpful in understanding Sorsha and Willow's relationship in the period between when the Willow movie takes place and the time frame of when the series takes place. And we see Sorsha and Willow actually having a conflict over Elora Danan, and Willow wants to teach her and train her the magic that she has with the magic or about the magic or how to use the magic that she has within herself. And Sorsha resists this. Sorsha has hidden her away, hidden her identity, colored her hair. She's no longer a redhead. And so she thinks that if she just stops Elora Danan from being discovered and keeps her hidden, that it won't be necessary for her to be trained on the magic. And we actually see them have a conflict about it where Willow's like, I'm a sorcerer, and she says, no, you're not. And it's very kind of offensive to Willow. And then we learn that he actually tries to sort of kind of lure Elora away from the castle. He spots her. He recognizes her I'm assuming because of his magic. And he tries to lure her away, and Elora is freaked out by it and runs away. And we get the impression this is the last time that Sorsha and Willow spoke to each other until he starts communicating with her in her dreams or telepathically or whatever, telling her that this evil is coming that we heard about in the first episode. So we have that flashback piece. And then we also get to see in this episode we get information about the bad guys. We get to see the bad guys conferring with the crone, who is, I guess, the high bad guy in this storyline. So we get to see the bad guys conferring with the crone, and we also get to see I'm blanking on his name. Valentine. That's it. We get to see Valentine, who is turned evil because he's been infected with evil magic during the attack by the Gales where Eric is kidnapped. So we get to see Valentine being evil and becoming even more evil, and then turning all the soldiers that Sorsha sends out to find Allura, which is really fascinating. We're going to have to talk about that, because we talked about how she sent out this, wacky group of people to rescue her son, and then to rescue Allura, she sends out the soldiers.
Yes.
Anyway, so we get to see Valentine turning all the soldiers into evil people in this episode. And then we also get to see our stalwart band interacting with the Nelwyns, interacting with Willow. Willow does his high Aldwyn routine with the Nelwyns, and Kit is annoyed by it. And we start to see some fracturing in the relationships, or the sort of the lines that are being drawn in the relationships. And they all decide that they're going to go to the immemorial city where Eric is being held captive together, and that Willow is going to teach Allura Dannon magic on their way. And so we're seeing kind of these, like I said, the lines that are being drawn. Jade is following the orders of her queen to protect, to find Eric. And Borman is there because he knows how to get through the barrier and what's beyond the barrier and how to handle a lot of that stuff. But his loyalty to this group is in question. Willow is there because he wants to train Allura Dannon. Allura Dannon is there because she wants to rescue Eric, which is interesting because she and Kit are aligned as far as their goals, but that's it. And then we've got Graydon there, who is the Kit's betrothed, he's there because his dad told him to go, but he seems to be on the Allura Dannon side. So we've got Willow and Jade and Graydon on Team Allura, and then we've got Kit and Foreman on Team let's find Eric, or at least get away, or we're beyond the barrier, so what can we do now kind of thing. I think that's about it. And so the most important elements of this episode are that they've started the journey. Willow is going with them. He's trying to teach Allura magic. Allura doesn't know magic, and Willow is talking about how because her magic has been squelched, she may not be able to find it again. And at the end of the episode, we have a couple of really great things. We have Graydon, who kind of summarizes everybody's position on this in this group. The loyalty, the jealousy. Kit is jealous of Allura. Borman wants to see what she can do. Graydon believes in her, and he knows that she's going to be the empress that saves them. And then, but Allura can't get the magic to work, and she's very frustrated, and she spends all night trying to do it, and she finally screams the spell, and then she gets hit over the head by Valentine, who finds them. And as he drags her away, the spell that she was trying to complete, which was to grow a plant, the plant grows. And that's the end of that episode. Did I miss anything important?
I think that's a pretty good summary.
And what did you like about this episode?
Okay, so first I think overall, for me, felt the tone was better in this episode than in the first one. It felt more willowy. It felt more like the movie Willow. It felt a little warmer, the first one. I think some of that was just them being, in the Nelwyn town, and kind of it's a little lighter, right? And they're kind of joking around, and we see Willow with his daughter. I like that whole scene there. Get to see, their bond.
And it's funny because you're right, it's lighter, but it has undertones of the seriousness. And I think that's what makes this episode better, because the last episode they tried to do seriousness with an undertone of lighter.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And it didn't really work, but this does.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think I think just having the Nelwyns there, it felt like, oh, we're calling back to the first, or to the movie more.
Yeah.
They did the finger test callback, which was funny. I love
Yes.
how they all lost interest after that. Oh, she failed the test. All right, we're moving on. Completely lost confidence.
But we're still going to have dinner.
Right. I also like that Willow. We see that Willow has some magic, right? We see that he's progressed. It's not just a sham like it kind of was in the movie. He's also not a great sorcerer. They didn't take the easy path of just, okay, now he's in that position, of the previous High Aldwin. No, he's got a little bit, but not much, right? He's not really at the level where he can compete against the evil of the world.
Right.
I thought that was a good setup for it. What else did I like? Love that he was the High Aldwin, but only like half respected. They'll let him go up and give his speech for a while, and then it's like, okay, we're done. I like that they set up how Kit is jealous of Alora. It's like, oh wait, she's more special than me. Like, I was a princess, and now she's come along. That's funny. I liked I like the training with Alora. She keeps doing the same thing over and over again, and not making any progress. They do good things like that are like story, but it's also humorous. The other characters are playing off of it as well, giving their comments.
Yeah.
It was a good opportunity to see more of the Borman character. We get a better sense of what his tie was to Mad Mardigan. He was his not apprentice. What do they call it? Squire. Yes,
Squire.
He was a squire. I like that. Mentioned Graydon, kind of giving the summary of how people are feeling. That shows that he's aware of what's going on. He's observant. He may not be a great hero, but we see that there's an intelligence lurking there. Like that. Yeah. I like the ending reveal of Alora's magic, where it's like, oh, finally, she's able to grow this plant. Although it wasn't fully clear to me why it worked that time. Was it because she was angry? Was it because she was just emotional? I hope that gets explained, and it's not just she just tried it in the correct number of times. Like, why did it work that time and not other times?
Yeah. I agree. I also I loved the interactions with Willow and his daughter Mims. That was some of the best. Those were the best scenes. There was just, and I don't. It almost feels like because they were better actors. I mean, I don't want to say that, because I think that all of this cast is really working hard and doing well, but there's a level of comfort in the interaction. It was almost as if these actors had been working with each other forever, and maybe they have. I haven't done any research on that. It's entirely possible.
They're actually father and daughter.
Oh, yeah, that's his real daughter? Then there you go. They know how to act with each other. That's awesome. I had no idea. That's phenomenal, because their interactions with each other were just so genuine and warm. I was like, wow, this is like, an order of magnitude above the level that we see with everybody else. Okay, so and now it makes sense.
I think the setup for that moment, the writing was very good. They did a good job. It was directed well, and that scene worked. I mean, that was to me, that was the standout scene of this episode.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm so glad to know that, because it was charming, very charming. I really enjoyed the flashbacks. I love, background information and, all of that kind of, filling in the gap stuff. Those are always my favorite parts in shows. Giving me more clues, give me more data so I can do some more analysis.
Well, and it fills in the gaps from the movie to now, right?
Yes. Yeah. Let's see what else. What else do I love? Again, the music was gorgeous. The scenery was gorgeous as they, went off on their journey. I thought that was a lot of fun. I agree. There was a lot of wonderful interplay amongst all of the characters. Lots of lighthearted, fun things, while still, there's that undertone of the importance of this. I mean, Willow is making it very clear. This is really important. He says something to Kit, which I actually wrote down. You're being awfully cavalier with the fate of the world, princess.
Yes.
And so it was funny, and yet it was still reminding us of what's important here. This is more than just rescuing Eric. This is about the fate of the world.
I love the line. He said, "I forgot you were hilarious." Okay.
So what are some of the things that you were not so crazy about?
Let me think. Something else I was going to say on your topic before, but I forgot. So, we'll go on to this. Would I improve? A little. Okay, first of all, I think they do a good job of keeping us aware of what the quest is, right? Because they're stretching this out over a series. It's not just one movie. You have to keep,
right,
a little bit in your head over the course of an hour and a half or 2 hours. And now it's like a weekly show, although they're all out now. There's this constant thing of, hey, we have to rescue my brother, remember? Like, that's why we're here. I think because they're going on these little side trips, it's good to have that reminder. So anyway, as to what I would improve, I was a bit confused as to who the crone is. I don't remember, even though I just saw the movie not too long ago, I'm like, the crone in the movie, I don't remember that character. So I was confusing the crone with Bavmorda, and I'm like, it's not the same person.
No, it's not the same person.
Confused about was who the crone is. Was that a character from the movie, or is that a character introduced in the show? My understanding is that they're sort of expanding the world of Willow, and this is a character who maybe was behind the scenes in the movie that we never saw, sort of like the Emperor in Star Wars, right? There's some other force back there, whereas in the movie it was Bavmorda was the evil one they were trying to defeat. Now it's the crone who was kind of behind the scenes, I guess. Or maybe just someone different.
Yeah.
It's a little unclear to me right now, but that's sort of the impression I get from this episode of what the crone is or who the crone is. And then there's also the worm is mentioned. Is the crone a minion of the worm, or is that a separate thing? So that was just a little unclear in this episode. They're sort of throwing it out because the characters probably have some sense of what's going on. At least Willow. Maybe they'll reveal more over time. It was a little confusing in this episode for me.
Yeah, and I got the impression. I agree. There's not very much detail in that, and I got the impression that the crone was sort of the. There's always this balance, right? There's the good and the bad, the evil and good balance that you can see in these shows. And so I got the impression that the crone was sort of this almost immortal evil, in the same way that Elora Danan is kind of like an immortal good, because she keeps coming back.
That makes sense.
I think that's kind of the sense I got. But I agree, there was very little description about what they were facing, what they were up against.
I like your take on that. I didn't get that impression, but now that you mention it, it does make sense. Yeah,
because, like Bavmorda was killable. But you get the impression that the crone kind of isn't.
Ongoing darkness that exists. Yeah, okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah. So that, they remove her minions, Bavmorda and the other evilness, and then the crone becomes weakened, or the overarching badness becomes weakened, but then can rise again. Because remember, again, in the beginning of the series, we have Willow talking about how the evil is rising. So as if it was never actually eliminated, it was just in the background, and now it's coming to the foreground. That's sort of my sense that I've got from that sort of
So how
phrasing
does the
that they
worm
used.
play into it?
Good question. That I was totally confused by.
Yeah, I think they're throwing this out there to for future, to have something in the background.
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
Okay. Let's see another thing that I thought
So let's.
it could be
Yeah.
improved. Though, like you, I appreciate the flashbacks and getting filled in on what occurred between the movie and now. I still feel like Sorsha is kind of a downer. I, I feel like she's just because we care for Willow, right? He's sort of the character that we're latching onto, or one of the main characters we're latching onto. So you have another character who mocks him and kind of rebuffs him and warns him away to the point where he never wants to go back. It makes us not care about or not like that character so much anymore, right? At least for me, because it's a disrespect to your hero, so it makes you like her less.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
And it was disrespectful to their friendship and disrespectful to all they had gone through with each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so what about you?
It wasn't real great.
Would you improve? What did you think didn't work well?
Gosh, Kit. I'm calling her the Petulant Princess in my head. She does not appear, this character doesn't appear to have a role other than to be sulky. She's all about, oh, we got to go rescue Eric, but now I'm not the most
Yes.
important girl in the room, so I'm sulky. And how long is this going to take? But then Borman, tell me about my dad. It's so important to me to find out what happened to my dad. She's written with, she's kind of going all over the place, sort of almost like a ball bouncing off walls and not really settling any place. And so her character, I'm wondering what is the purpose of this character. And as a storyteller, you've got to have an understanding of what all your characters are going to do, what their purpose is, who they are, and then constantly have them act and react according to that framework. And I can't figure out Kit at all.
That's interesting. I think for me, she's probably not only first of all, I agree with what you said, but not only that, I think as an actress, I don't know. I feel like she's miscast or something. They should have had someone else in that role. I said this about the first episode. I feel like there's too much sort of modern style acting, and I feel like she's the one character in this episode who still felt that way. I felt like the others kind of settled into their roles a bit more.
Yeah.
And brought me into that Willow universe. She just stands out like a sore thumb to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me, but
well, no, I think the part of that problem is that she doesn't have a consistent job in the story. Back in the beginning, in the first episode, when she was essentially Mad Mardigan's daughter, and she was going to be Mad Mardigan, I wish they would just let her be Mad Mardigan. So instead of standing around whining, because that's not what Mad Mardigan did. Mad Mardigan did stuff. It would make so much more sense to me if, in discovering that Elora Danan needs to be trained and it's going to take forever for them to go find Eric, if she had just left on her own. And then we had a separate storyline of Kit trying to find her brother. That would make sense to me.
That would have been great.
She would be behaving like her dad.
Yeah.
Would have been great. Or what if she and Borman left to do that? They're both on the same page. We're going to go find Eric.
Borman's like, okay, we'll get this done, and then I'll be on with my life.
Yeah. I think that could have been an amazing sort of like, having these people. And in a way, that might have been really cool, because one of the things that's interesting about this story is that, you frequently see these journey stories where you have one or two people heading off on their quest, and then they sort of collect their group into their gathering of misfits. And we didn't get that here. We got the gathering of misfits in Tirisleen, and then they all set out. And if we could have seen that story sort of turned on its head, instead of gathering your misfits as you go, what if you lost all your misfits as you went? As they all went off to do their different things, and then came together at the end with all of the lessons that they learned on their individual journeys, and then fought the great
Yes.
battle at the end.
I like that.
That might have been really cool. Anyway, that's what's, I think, really struggling. So Kit's sort of modern behavior, you're right. She's sticking out like a sore thumb because she doesn't have a job.
Right. Yeah.
Except to be petulant. And so, yeah, I would have been really cool, I think, to see her and Borman take off and have their adventures and then come together, on their way. Everybody come together. Like, what was it? They're going to the shores of the whatever sea, the broken sea, the shattered sea, something like that.
That's a good insight. I think I like the fact that there's this jealousy between her and Allura. That makes sense. Her character. You're right. It would have been better had she just been proactive and said, all right, I'm done. There's nothing here that's happening. I'm moving on. Grabs them and goes, right?
Yeah. And she could have had a conflict with Jade because Jade was going to stay, and she would be upset with Jade because, Jade's her best friend and Jade's not going. She could have taken with her festering frustration at Allura Dannon and the jealousy, and then kind of worked that out on a journey with Borman.
And
could have been cool.
Seems like that's more in her character, the character that they set up in the first episode. She's the first time we see her, she's off practicing, swordplay with her friend and trainer, and kind of like against the will of her mother. So we see that she's sort of a rebel. She wants to do her own thing. She's ready to go. She's ready to flee the situation that she's in and not marry this guy and all that. And then now it feels like she's shackling herself to this group for no real reason. Exactly.
And she's going to sulk the entire way. That's what it feels like. That's what I didn't actually really like about this episode, is just that, there didn't seem to be a role for this character. What's her job?
There
so
are the big things that we sort of mentioned are tonal, right? It's like she sticks out because now she's this sulky whiner person. And so that's like a tonality shift from otherwise, like it's a warm journey of these adventures, going out, learning stuff, moving on. And then you also have the Sorsha being a downer in the flashbacks and being kind of mean toward the hero. Like those two things really stood out, and not in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
First one, I'd give it a 7. I think like where I started with my feedback on this, I think it felt more like the Willow movie. And it just things were starting, for the most part, right? Things were gelling better.
Yeah, I agree. I gave it a 7 too. I am still in a place of hope for how this is going. I agree that there's a lot of warmth, a lot of the tone is better. It feels good. There's just these like these sort of pockets of, oh, what's going on there? But otherwise, yeah, agreed. 7.
It was like I enjoyed it enough to where I give it a chance, see where it goes. This one I enjoyed a little more. I think it's moving generally in the right direction with only 2 or 3 missteps. So yeah, it left me more excited to want to continue.
All right. So we thank our listeners for being here and ask you to join us next time when we talk about either Willow Season 1, Episode 3, if it's still available on Disney+, and that one is called The Battle of the Slaughtered Lamb. Otherwise, if Disney does go through with their threat of pulling the series from Disney+, then we will talk about the entire rest of the series as a recap and sort of overarching things that we came away with from the series when we watched it the first time around. Again, you can find Michael's information and his website in the link to his website in the show notes below, link to my website and the audiobooks that are available on this YouTube channel. And of course, we so very much appreciate when people like these podcast videos and subscribe to the channel and click the notifications bell so that you know when the next one's coming.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.
So thanks very much, Mike. This has been awesome.
Okay, bye-bye.